what would you say to somebody right now that in quarantine has recognized they're unhappy with their job, they're unhappy with life, where they live, whatever it may be? Don't get out of your marriage if you can. God loves marriage. But
Yes.
I'm not telling you to leave your wife.
Let's put that on record. We're not telling you to leave your husband or wife.
Not saying that. But what would you say to somebody who's contemplating a huge risk right now?
I think it's the time to do it. I really do. I think that, one thing that we've all learned is that things are temporary, and, people make these massive moves for jobs, and now they'll never be able to go back to those jobs. Living in Manhattan, I have so many friends whose offices are just never going to reopen. And they're like, this is the time I can go move to Denver. This is the time I can go move to LA and I can still do my job. And we're learning that what we thought was so important and so in the forefront of our lives can be taken away at any point. And so I have a girlfriend who's in Austin, Texas, and her dream has been to move to Denver. And she just found out her office is not opening up till the end of 2021. And she called me and she said, "What do I do?" I said, "You sign a lease in Denver. That's what you do. You pack up and you go." Obviously, it's not always that easy. If you have kids, if you have a family, those things have to be taken into consideration, of course. But if you're unhappy right now, this is the time to step back and say, is this really that important? Because we just saw society, not just in America, in the entire world, have to come to a complete stop and say something can change on a day-to-day basis. If I'm unhappy, I should do something about it, even if it's little tiny steps every day to make you happier. And that's not always easy. Some days it is depressing. Some days you are going to be set back, but knowing that you're working towards that risk and towards that happiness is so important.
You are super out there. You're visually beautiful.
Oh, thank
you. But you're
so are you. I try to keep up with you. I'm like, she's working out all the time. I need to get into the gym right now. She looks so good.
But what I love about you is that you're, and I say this all the time to young women. Last night I spoke to a group of women at Vanderbilt, and I talked about when your soul's pretty, you're never gonna, you may physically age, but you're always gonna be beautiful when your soul's pretty. Your soul's pretty. I think one of the reasons why your soul is pretty is also your faith. And maybe you don't talk about that so much because you're talking sports and you're doing this and you're doing that. But what role has faith played in being in New York and living alone and that journey for you?
Yeah, by the way, your soul is pretty is another tattoo. I mean, by the end of this, you're going to have tattoos all over my body. I'm going to be having somebody ink them out when I get out of the studio. Well, first of all, and I grew up, in Texas. So of course, I went to a Baptist church, and like I said, my parents were very big in making sure they kept me in the church structure. But I was a typical kid where I was like, well, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go to youth group to hang out with my friends. But, I never really understood what it meant to have that connection with God, because I always saw religion as there had to be a middleman. There was a preacher there. I went to Catholic school, which why I went to a Catholic school as a Baptist, I've got a lot of questions, but, talking to the priest and the idea of having to confess and, all of these things never made sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that pushed me away from the idea of staying in church, because it was so this other human who is flawed is going to tell me how to have a relationship with an unflawed being. Mm-hmm. And I ran away from it and I acted out. College was crazy for me. And I have no problem admitting, oh yeah, I mean, that's what we do here. I was insane in college, didn't care. And, it really had no regard for the fact that I was raised in a house to feel differently. I just never really could buy into it. And I tried to stay in church. And when I got diagnosed with cancer, I immediately did oh God, help me, even though I knew I hadn't been walking with it.
Yeah.
But when I moved to New York, I hit this rock bottom in a relationship that, it's just, and as they normally do, they end poorly, your heart hurts. And I just remember going out and talking to one of my girlfriends. And at the same exact time, she was telling me we should check out this church called Hillsong. My younger sister, who's very plugged in the church scene in Austin, she called me and she said, hey, have you ever heard of Hillsong, New York City? And it was just weird, again, a God thing. And I just said, okay, if two different people in my life who are watching me struggle think I should go to this church, I should go. And of course, I do some Googling and I realize, Carl Lentz is the pastor and he's Justin Bieber's mentor. So I'm just, this, my world is swirling. But Rachel, the first day that I went, I sat and I just bawled my eyes out and I fell down to my knees, because it was the first time I had felt in my entire life that I was actually connecting directly to a higher being and to a faith. And since that day until quarantine, because of course we can't go out right now, go to church in Manhattan, I didn't miss a Sunday unless I was on the road. And that is something that my parents were like, wait, you're like purposely going to church every Sunday? Like, I thought you hated doing that. And I learned so quickly that it's not about rules. It's not about religion. It's about being who you truly are. And I've gotten to know Carl, and Carl is a great friend of mine now, which again is just like a wild dream of mine. But just like him saying, like, you are who you are and you are where you are for a reason. And that's good enough. As long as every day you're working on your soul and your connection with God, everything else can fall by the wayside, because that'll eventually get fixed. And one of my favorite quotes that he has is, there was a woman who was mad that somebody in the audience had a beer. And she was like, Pastor, this guy shouldn't have a beer. And he said, when we fix his soul, that beer will go away, but we're worried about his soul, not the beer in his hand. Yeah. And that's been so important to me living in New York City, because it's not judgment. I don't feel judged. I don't feel like a bad person or a bad Christian. So I get to go in and pour out my heart every single day and thank God that my life was saved, both physically and spiritually.
You hit the nail on so many fronts, in that, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, because I'm taking off the mask and getting real. Part of my healing, besides therapy, has also been in Al-Anon, because I have somebody in my past that was an alcoholic, and so I have a sponsor, and we were talking about that, and I said, and my sponsor, she's amazing. Used to be Jewish, and she recently became a Christian in the past year, and we were talking about the fact that it is not about, for a lot of people, it's a religion thing. And that's why people don't want God. And what I always try to share with people is, it's so much relationship. It is not legalistic. And once you feel him and him and he's walking with you, and that when you had cancer, and when I lost my mom, and when I've been on the floor, and when I've been depressed and almost took my own life, the up, the down, the happy, the sad, he's my best friend, my Abba Father, my Papa, my provider. And every opportunity that comes to me, he's got a hand in it, right? Like every single opportunity. It's crazy to me, Kayce.
And it's never something that you truly understand. Like, if you said that to somebody who hasn't felt those things, they'd look at you like you were crazy. Yeah. I had never really understood that level of faith until I felt it. And I think the most frustrating thing early on was, because I got it all the time, was like, well, you work at Barstool Sports, you swear on the radio, you hear what you talk about, you can't be a Christian. And Carl was so good about like showing me places in the Bible that was just saying, like, that's not the way that this is supposed to be. You are flawed. We're all sinning. And I think that's when I really started to believe in it. It was because I stepped back and I said, okay, if I'm not going to buy into the religious rules and the shame and the judgment, which is why people walk away from church, yes, that I'm going to walk every single day in my life feeling better, that I have a connection that's going to potentially be my eternity. And the way I always say to people who are like, well, what makes you so sure that Christianity is real? What makes you so sure that heaven is real? And I said, listen, I can't prove it to you, but I'm going to tell you how I feel about it. And even if all of this is fake, which I don't think that it is, but at least I'm living my life every single day, feeling better about living my life.
I have chills.
I mean, I have chills too, but that's the way it feels. It's like, okay, like, so say somehow we find out, one day that heaven's not real, which again, I don't believe is true. Yeah. But I lived my life once I was saved and once I got it back into church, believing that. And that helped me through those depressions. That helped me through that heartbreak. That helped me through, when I got a great promotion, when I found out I was doing the show with Deion Sanders the day before, it was like, is college football going to happen? What am I going to do if college football doesn't happen? And immediately I find that out and I immediately thank God, because I'm like, well, like my life is better having that to believe in. So I'm not going to ever try to convince somebody that heaven is real or that God is real, but I can say, listen, like I live my life happier and more joyous, even in my darkest moments, because I believe in it, not because I believe in a religion that tells me I can't drink, I can't swear, I can't go out. Like I believe that my soul has to be healthy. And if my soul is healthy, my life will be healthy.
Okay, see, that's how you evangelize to people. In anyway, there's this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, and she says basically, we don't draw people to Christ by saying you're wrong, you did that wrong, you did that wrong. We draw people by Christ by being so lovely. By my old girlfriend said, being a Bible with skin on it to the extent that we can, because we're human and flawed. And they say, what does Kayce have? I want that. Kayce has a peace about her. Kayce has a light about her. Kayce has a joy about her. That's Christ living in you. And that's the way that we draw people to us, not judging. And I have to catch myself. If I start down that, I'm like, no, it's not your place to judge, Rachel. It's not. It's your place to love and to show grace and to forgive 7 times 77. And that's it. And to reflect Christ. It's not your job to do any And a lot of times the people that are judging, and in my life, I can look back and it's when I had my own stuff that I was wrestling with myself.
Right. Oh, that's the key. I'll notice myself, wanting to judge somebody again and then being like, like, do you remember what you did and said last week? Like, maybe we should stop. But, the idea of grace to me has been something that's such a new thing. Like, my mom showed me grace as a kid. My dad showed me grace, but as myself, and I know that, you helped me through, the biggest heartbreak I'd ever been through in my last breakup. And one of the things that throughout that breakup that kept being repeated to me by my ex was that why are you showing me so much grace? And that was something that from within I had never really felt, because I didn't have that grace. I was constantly fighting. I was constantly trying to make up for whatever I thought I was lacking. But now in my faith and now in my newfound joy, even in the most pain my heart has ever been in, I was able to show that grace because that's living within me. And I'm not perfect. I mean, everybody goes through their moments, but it was the first time I had really felt like, oh, wow, this is why showing grace is so important, because it becomes like a natural reaction to people who probably don't deserve that grace from you. Like, you are a happier person. And so that's what I work out every day. And it is a struggle sometimes to show people grace, but even in my hardest, darkest moments, that's so important to me because I was shown grace to have my life saved. Jesus showed us grace. And even if you don't take the Christianity thing into it, just treating people the way that you would want to be treated. I never did that. I didn't do that for a long time. And I was selfish and I was angry and I was depressed and I treated people that way. Now it's like, even if I'm angry and depressed and sad, I can still show that grace because I have helped to do it.
I think just as important, Kayce, as a 350-pound lineman talking about mental health, right? I think it's just as important for a beautiful, strong, talented, successful sportscaster at the internet and one of the world's leading media companies, sports media companies, to talk about her mental health. And you recently have been really outspoken about it. I retweeted something that you tweeted and it kind of caught fire on my Twitter. What makes you comfortable doing that? And I know it's uncomfortable, but what drives you to be so open about your own mental health? Because you truly don't know the amount of lives that you touched and saved by doing that.
Well, thank you. And I would say the same to you. And like I mentioned earlier, I always go back to that day in May when I was laying sad in my bed crying at 4 a.m. and happened to see you tweet, and just, seeing that vulnerability really made me want to reconnect with you, which then was able to help me through, a hard time in my life. And I think that I sat back, especially with 2020 being the way that it is, and how, people's masks had to be put on, but internally had to be taken off because people weren't getting to go do the things they normally get to do, and they had more time to think. And what I realized was that there's such a stigma on if you're popular, if you're a celebrity, if you have money, if you're an athlete, if you're an actor, if you're seen as attractive, that you're not allowed to be flawed. And for me, it was, it's just like, that's not true. People that have the most money in the world can be the saddest in their soul. And so what I realize is that even if I can touch one life, in the same way, if I say, hey, go get your skin checked, and somebody goes to the dermatologist and realize that they needed something removed, I can say, listen, going to therapy is awesome. I love my therapist, and she has helped me work through things I didn't even know existed in my brain, but also just like, it's okay to not be okay. It really is. And that's something that, mental health awareness has helped me, but also, I can't totally take credit for it. Carl Lentz did a sermon on that at Hillsong early on, and when I first started going, and he was just like, we want you to ask for help because we are flawed humans. And I just sat back and I thought, you know what? If I can go on SiriusXM and say this, or I can write it in a blog, or I can even just put it out on Twitter that I myself has struggled, then it connects me to people who might not understand or might not realize, like, oh, this girl that works at Barstool goes through the same thing that I do on a daily basis. Maybe I should ask for help.
Yeah.
Asking for help is like, I know it's like so cliche, but like asking for help is like cool these days. I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, if you need help, holding it in is only hurting yourself and everybody else around you. And I go back to thinking about the most depressed I had been in my life. I was just carrying all this weight of my friends and my family and watching them struggle. And it's like, no, like I can sit down now in front of my friends and say, here I am, I'm broken, I'm miserable, I'm sad, like I need help. And those are the moments that progress you as a human, and also your relationships. And those are the relationships that you need. And I know the quote that you're talking about retweeting. And again, I can't take full credit. Carl's helped me with this as well. But the people that don't help you through those moments don't even deserve general admission to your life. They don't deserve a voice in your head. They don't deserve a space on your stage. And I've learned that. So now it's like quality over quantity. And if you don't understand mental health, like I don't need you in my life. If you're going to talk down and say, oh, how could she be depressed? Look what she does. To me, it's the opposite. Like I need help just like anybody else. And I'm okay to say that out loud because I feel like now mental health is so much more important than it's ever been because people are willing to have the conversation.
Well, first of all, I heard a quote the other day, and I know you will appreciate this, and I wish I knew who said it, but and we have so many tattoos to get, but it's
I'm tatted up, girl. Like I'm over here like Young Money tattoos right now.
This one said, people would rather share your burdens than carry your casket.
Wow.
And
oh God, chills everywhere. It's
so true, but whether you call it the enemy or whatever you believe, depression, anxiety, it'll lie to you, and isolation will lie to you and tell you that you're a burden, and will lie to you and tell you your family, you can't call your family and friends 3 a.m. in the morning or reach out and that's the lie that almost got me and that almost took me out, that I would be a burden to people. And so I suffered in silence, and that is, it's so profound to me. And you also said something else I thought was great is right now more than ever in the world, we're talking about mental health. And we're destigmatizing it. We're saying, and I say to athletes all over the country when I'm speaking to men, you have never been as strong. You have never been as masculine. You have never been as attractive as when you say, I don't have tools in my toolbox to be able to deal with this. I need some help. I need an Allen wrench. That's going to require me going and talking to somebody about this. I can't deal with it on my own. And it's as important as your elbow being busted. Your mental health is as important. It's crazy.
And you're so right. Whenever people don't realize that actually asking for help is, like I said, it's not only like the cool thing to do right now because it's helping you, it can save your life. And, I've had friends in my past who still to this day don't believe in medication, don't believe in going to therapy. And that's, I disagree with them wholeheartedly, but that's their right. But I sit here and I say, okay, listen, like if you're sick and your body is sick, they give you medicine to fix it, right? Well, if your chemistry is off in your brain and it's telling you something that is not true, you can then go find someone who can help you fix that chemistry. Yes. Why would you not do it? And one of my best friends who works at Barstool, his name is John Feidelberg. He's a crazy person, but I love him to death. He got a tattoo on his wrist that says it's lying with a little smiley face so that when his brain starts to tell him things that he knows is not true, he can look down and remind himself, like, my own brain is betraying me right now, but that's not reality. That's not reality as it is. And I feel like if you can't get yourself to admit that, you're only hurting your own fulfillment. You're only hurting your own life. And, I might be a burden, and I put it in air quotes, like I'm not a burden, but I might be hard to deal with sometimes. My friends might be like, we're crying about this again, but at least they're able to help me so that when it's their turn, I can turn and say, you showed me some love and grace that I probably didn't deserve at the time, but I needed it. And now I'm going to do that to you. And that's the whole point of human being relationships, is being there for people. And if your mental health is off, you can't only be there for yourself, but you can't be there for others.
Amen to that. What do you do for self-care? We ask everybody this on Sunday. So what does Kayce do for self-care?
So I know the cliche answer is working out, right? But I am one of those people, like I am not fun to be around if I don't have those endorphins. So, just getting moving and walking, and, even if I can't go do a full blown workout, just doing something that my body feels like it's doing good is so important to me. And of course, I do want to look good, but now more than ever in 2020, I want to feel good. And so self-care for me is doing that. But also I'm a huge proponent of silence. Like I work all day, every day in this crazy atmosphere. I love Barstool. I've never been happier in my career, but it's a zoo, it's a crazy content factory that's go, go, go all the time. And then I live in Manhattan, which is the same way. So I love to go home and not turn on Spotify, not turn on my TV, not turn on anything for, even if it's only 10, 15 minutes, and just sit and just be in silence, because I can finally say, okay, this is what I'm actually feeling today. This is what I'm actually thinking today. And I didn't do that for so long. Everything I felt I would push down, and I go back to the red light drug. I'd say, oh, it's okay. Like I don't need to deal with what I'm feeling because I have to go act. Well, now I go home and I kind of unpack all of that and say, what upset me today? What made me happy today? Who should I thank today? Who should I reach out to today? And I can tell the days that I don't, how much more I'm affected the next day. And so silence to me is golden. And I never thought I love to talk, you and I love to talk. I've been talking forever on this interview, but the silence of just nothing but your thoughts and your mental health and praying and saying thank you to God for the things that did happen, even if you don't feel thankful. That to me is the biggest self-care, because if I don't pay attention to what's going on in here, then it's not going to do me any good outwardly.
That's so good. And I was even in my talks, like people say, give me examples. I spoke to 1,000 police officers in the state of Alabama last week, and it was amazing.
Wow.
And in these talks that I do with corporations and schools, and they say, give me a list of self-care. And you just gave me another one that I actually use, but I never use as an example. And that's silence. And there's tons of times where I just turn the radio down and I just sit and I just talk to myself, or I'm just in, it's just full on silence, like you said, or I pray, or I just, you know,
it's like taking that deep breath, because like I love music, I love podcasts, but I find myself, even if I'm putting on the most soothing John Mayer song ever, I'm still not listening to my own thoughts. I'm listening to John Mayer, which is great. But in order for me to really kind of work through things for myself, I have to be able to have no outside noise. And even if it's, listening to a sermon that I love or listening to an uplifting podcast, it's still a voice into myself that I'm allowing to kind of drown out my thoughts, which is obviously a good thing if it's good things you're putting to your mind and your heart. If it's bad things, it's a completely different story. But the only way I can find that personally is through silence. And that to me, it's like, if I know a big football game is coming on that I need to watch for my job, I'll say, okay, there's 30 minutes before kickoff. I need to cook dinner. I'm going to cook dinner in silence, and I'm going to sit and have a nice glass of wine, and I'm just going to be by myself. And so by the time that game comes on, I'm like, I'm ready, no matter what has happened throughout the day. And that mixed with, staying in therapy and then just getting that physical exercise, those to me are so important. Like, I would love to say like, oh, I do spa days, but like, that's not realistic. Realistic to me is just learning how I'm feeling about myself. And with the help of therapy and with the help of faith and with the help of friends and family, I'm learning more and more about myself every day that at almost 32, I wouldn't have even known existed had I not just been in silence.
Last thing, Kayce, and this has been so awesome, and I cannot wait. You're kicking off season 2, by the way.
I'm so honored. I didn't know I was the kickoff guest.
You are. So last question for the people that are viewing this and listening, what is something that you're focused on this week, that you're intentional about, that they could impart, they could take something from and apply it to their own life?
Okay, so I am turning 32 on Sunday, October the 25th. And so I have realized, like, I'm not a big birthday person at all. Like I think my 21st birthday was the last one I like truly cared about. But one of the things that I've been very intentional about, because I'm not a birthday person, I usually try to like throw it away, is recognizing that my friends and family who want to do something special for me, when in the past I've been like, please don't do anything, like, and almost like annoyed by it, that I'm intentionally allowing people to show me how they love me. Because in the past I've been like, oh, my sister, my younger sister, who's my best friend and an angel, she's absolutely amazing and works with kids with autism and, kids who have been assaulted. And she does these amazing things in the world. Her outlet is showing people love in her personal life. And I'm like, Allie, I don't want to have this party, but that's the way she shows me love. And so this week I've decided, you know what, like, I'm trying not to be selfish by being selfless and letting them be selfish for me. And I think that's so important, because if I can just say, you know what, if you guys want to take me out to dinner and that makes you happy, then that makes me happy, because I'm giving you something that you want to show me. And I'm grateful that I have people in my life that want to show me that. So just letting people show their love to me, even if it's not something that I could necessarily want to handle. But if they want to spoil me for my birthday, I'll allow them to do that, despite me wanting to probably just sit and watch a game, because that's how they show love and compassion.
Let people love you. Yes. That's super, like, let people love you in the way that they love you, right? And not in the ways that we conjure up, or that we let people love you. I heard a woman say one time, I want my husband to give me flowers and to be that, cards and all those things. She said, but what it took me many years of marriage to talk or realize was the fact that he always puts gas in my car, and he gets the ice off of my windshield. He makes sure I'm ready to go. I've got, my tires are good. Like, he takes care of me. He does these little things. And in that way, he's showing love.
Right. And that's so important to like recognize the people in your life that do that, because, like you mentioned, like all these small things, like my dad did that for us growing up. And so again, like I took it for granted. Like I realized, like, now when I date people, I'm like, you're not turning my heater on in my car like my dad did, and it's like those little acts of kindness to somebody else can show the most love. Whereas like, like I said, like I'm just not a big birthday person, but to my sister and to my best friends, that means so much to them, because when people do it for them, it makes them feel good. And they want to then make other people feel good. So it's a pay it forward, and just letting people love you the way that they can. And in turn, realizing that you're loving them by letting them do that. And I'm learning all these things myself as I go through, the mental health stuff, and just finding myself and saying, you know what, I love in a different way than my best friend does, but she's showing me that she loves me, and I love her because of that. And just try, it's just a big love triangle, and you
love
talked about that. Yeah, it's a love fest. And you and I have talked about that, like giving people chances to show that they respect and love you. And if they don't show you that, then you move on and you say, okay, you aren't loving me the way I need to be loved. You aren't respecting me the way I need to be loved. I'm going to focus on the people who want to show me that. And if that's, a birthday party or flowers or putting gas in the car or just calling to say that they love you, then that's what you accept, because they're showing you that they do.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for you. And I'm so thankful for your wisdom. And I'm thankful, I wouldn't wish heartache on anybody, but I'm thankful that for this thing we call technology. And I'm thankful for you going through a hard time and me being able to be there. And I don't think anything happens by accident. We didn't reconnect by accident. And now we've reconnected this beautiful friendship. And now you get to pour into everybody that this goes out to. And I am so thankful, my friend.
I'm sitting here about to start crying and like, well, I'm going to walk out and these guys are going to be like, what's going on? But I can't, and I know I've told you this, off air, but I can't tell you enough. Like you were there when I needed somebody so badly. And I can't say thank you enough, but just the idea of you being so strong in every single thing that you have gone through, and you still have a smile on your face, and you still are impacting people when you probably didn't want to, but just to know like you are impacting so many people. And just a random tweet in the middle of the night, like it changed my entire outlook. And, I hope that you know how special that you are, because you have been so important to me. And like I said, I haven't seen you in 4 or 5 years in 3D. But I still look back and say, if I didn't have Rachel in that moment and throughout the summer, I don't know where I would be. And you do that for so many people. And I hope you know that.
Well, I love you. And thank you for blessing me today and everybody on this podcast. So
anytime. I'm going to start crying. So maybe if you need criers, I'll come on and cry for you.
And I'm going to put all of her socials. And so you can follow her and you can check her out, and you can talk about faith and sports and all of those things, and follow a real person who's out here making a difference by being authentically her, 1,000% her.
For better or worse, sometimes it's for the worst, but at least it's me.
All right. She is Kayce Smith. I'm Rachel Baribeau. It is Sunday Soul. Hey, Rachel Baribeau here. If you love this video, please subscribe. You can also hit that little bell down there, and that will let you know every single time we go live. And one better, leave us a comment. And the ultimate, share it with a friend, because that's the power of social media. That's the power of good news. It travels fast. I love you guys. Thank you so much. See you next time.